By early 1942, World War II had spread across the globe, with the Axis powers advancing seemingly unstoppable.
From defeat rose a grand alliance. The US, Britain, and the Soviet Union united to resist fascist rule and fight for freedom.
Summer 1942, Germany's 6th Army targeted Stalingrad, a symbol and the gateway to Caucasus oil. With blitzkrieg fury, German troops and machines stormed in, certain of quick triumph.
Stalingrad became a hell on earth as relentless bombing leveled the city, marking the start of history's bloodiest battle. As German troops entered Stalingrad, they met fierce resistance. Every street, house, and basement became a Red Army fortress.
With the cry, "Not one step back," Soviets turned Stalingrad into a trap. Each soldier fought to the death to halt the enemy's advance.
Fighting raged for every inch. The Red Army held strong, bleeding the Germans and stalling their push. Beneath Stalingrad, the Red Army struck from tunnels and sewers, catching the Germans off guard.
Germany might fail to break Soviet resistance, each building a trap, each step a costly mistake.
As the battle dragged on, winter came, the Red Army's silent ally, crushing German hopes.
Starving and freezing, the Germans lost their edge. Blitzkrieg buried under snow and suffering.
With winter gear and hard-won skill, the Red Army struck back. Step by step, the Germans were forced to retreat. While Germans fought in the ruins, the Soviets launched Operation Uranus, a surprise pincer that sealed the 6th Army's fate.
Operation Uranus succeeded brilliantly. The 6th Army was cut off, trapped in Stalingrad with no supplies and no escape. All relief efforts failed. Defying Hitler's orders, General Paulus surrendered in February 1943, ending one of the war's greatest tragedies.
Stalingrad shattered the Wehrmacht's myth and launched the Red Army's unstoppable advance, a turning point in the war.
While Stalingrad burned, Germany's Desert Fox Rommel pushed into Egypt, aiming to seize the Suez Canal, a lifeline for Allied supply. Opposing Rommel stood the British 8th Army, led by General Montgomery, ready to defend Egypt at all costs. The barrage devastated Axis camps, inflicting heavy losses and breaking their will from the battle's first moments. After the barrage, British Sherman tanks surged forward. Though lightly armored, their sheer numbers overwhelmed the German panzers. Behind the tanks, British infantry stormed the battlefield, clashing with entrenched Axis defenses, every meter fought at deadly cost. In the desert night, the battle became hand-to-hand. Sheer will and bravery decided survival. For days, both sides fought fiercely over every inch, a brutal war of attrition that would decide North Africa's fate.
Montgomery's strategy and firepower won the day. Rommel was driven out of Egypt.
Defeated at El Alamein, Axis forces retreated across Libya, relentlessly pursued by the British with no chance to regroup.
In November 1942, as El Alamein ended, Operation Torch began, a massive Allied landing in North Africa, opening a western front. Allied forces stormed into Morocco and Algeria, seizing vital ground with stunning speed and scale.
With Allied forces closing in from east and west, the Axis were trapped in Tunisia. Surrender became their only option. The pincer had worked.
250,000 Axis troops surrendered. North Africa was won, Fortress Europe awaited. The Japanese assault on Midway was fierce, but met with determined resistance from U.S. anti-aircraft guns and a smaller air force. Spotting the U.S. fleet, Nagumo changed bomb loads, then changed again. Amid chaos and delay, Japanese carriers were left fatally exposed. Thanks to broken Japanese codes, the U.S. knew the plan. Admiral Nimitz launched a bold, preemptive strike, despite the risks. Amid the chaos, luck struck. A PBY Catalina spotted the Japanese carriers, shifting the battle and opening a golden chance for a U.S. strike. Japanese sailors fought bravely, operating anti-aircraft batteries with frantic speed, forming a steel wall of fire to protect the fleet. Meanwhile, Japan's veteran Zero pilots formed a deadly aerial wall, relentlessly attacking U.S. squadrons and forcing them into desperate risks. Dauntless bombers dove through flak and hit as the carriers rearmed. Luck became lethal.
In seconds, the carriers became firestorms. Packed decks ignited into unstoppable disaster. In mere minutes, 3 of Japan's main carriers, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, became blazing wrecks, wiped from the battle. Japan's last carrier, Hiryu, struck back and damaged the Yorktown, but was soon found and destroyed, ending their final hope. The Battle of Midway completely reversed the tide of the war in the Pacific, providing a decisive turning point and demonstrating the superiority of naval air power, marking the end of an era.
Post-Midway, the U.S. adopted island hopping, skipping strongholds, seizing strategic points, and closing in on Japan.
Guadalcanal, 1942, the first island hop. Marines hit the shore, met by ferocious resistance in the jungle heat.
Every tree became a fortress. Japanese fought to the end, bleeding the Marines at every step. U.S. warships rained fire on Japanese defenses, trying to clear a path for infantry to push inland.
In the skies, U.S. aircraft provided constant support, striking hidden Japanese positions in the jungle to aid the infantry's advance.
In the jungle, every inch was a death trap. The Japanese resisted to the last man. Japanese troops used the jungle for deadly ambushes, making every U.S. step a risk. Many fell in silence. Close quarters fights were brutal, with no retreat, only death or survival. Flamethrowers and smoke cleared the caves. Bunker by bunker, the Americans pushed forward. At sea, chaos reigned. Guadalcanal saw some of the fiercest naval battles in history. Beneath the Atlantic waves, U-boat wolf packs stalked Allied convoys, the lifeline of the war effort. Beneath the waves, German U-boats, the Grey Wolves, waited silently, striking with deadly precision under cover of night. Torpedoes sank hundreds of ships, supplies lost, lives taken, and the Allied war effort pushed to the brink.
Convoys burned and sank, leaving survivors adrift in freezing waters, a fight for life even harsher than the battlefield.
But the Allies fought back. Radar and sonar turned the tide. Escort ships began hunting the hidden Grey Wolves beneath the waves. Destroyers struck back relentlessly, unleashing depth charges that shook the seas, hunting the invisible enemy below. Inside the U-boat, every depth charge was a fight for survival. The crew endured pressure, blasts, and the looming threat of collapse.
Naval aircraft swept the Atlantic skies, spotting and striking U-boats from above, forcing them to dive or be destroyed.
The tide of the Atlantic turned. With better tech and tactics, the Allies broke the Wolfpacks, securing their vital supply lines. Post-Stalingrad, Hitler launched into Kursk, betting on new tanks to pierce Soviet lines. July 1943, Tigers, Panthers, and thousands of tanks roared into Kursk, facing the Red Army's steel wall and the largest German armored assault. Kursk was a trap, layer upon layer of Soviet defenses waiting to crush the German assault. A wave of tanks and fire. Germany's assault roared into Kursk, seeking to break the unbreakable. Prokhorovka, July 1943. Thousands of tanks collided, igniting the largest armored clash in history. The sky over Kursk became a battleground. Swarms of planes dueling for control, life and death hanging in the balance below. Kursk broke Hitler's momentum. The Red Army now surged west in full counteroffensive. In the Pacific, Japan's desperation gave rise to terrifying tactics: suicide paratroopers, last-man defenses, and absolute refusal to surrender. In the shadows, resistance grew, silent, relentless, striking from within to weaken the fascist grip. Above all, World War II was a civilian tragedy. Millions lived in fear, facing hunger, disease, and unimaginable violence. Every triumph was built on pain. The wounded, the healers, and the fragile thread of life amid war's fury. Late 1943, in Tehran, the Allies charted the path forward, preparing to strike into Western Europe.
By late 1943, the tide had fully turned. The Allies now held the initiative, forcing the Axis onto the defensive across every front.
From frozen eastern trenches to desert sands and Pacific islands, soldiers proved that courage and will were the war's greatest weapons.
1942-1943 marked a turning point, a testament to unity and resolve. The great counteroffensive had begun. A decisive landing loomed. The world stood at the brink of a new phase, the final stage of the Great War, where humanity's fate would be decided.
In 1919, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, ending World War I.
Instead of peace, its harsh terms sowed deep resentment, turning peace into a national humiliation for Germany.
Hyperinflation and economic crisis devastated German society, plunging millions into destitution.
This widespread despair created fertile ground for extremist ideologies and empty promises of revival.
Amidst societal chaos, the Nazi Party emerged, promising to restore Germany's glory. They found hope in calls for extreme nationalism and vengeance, ready to follow a new leader.
With masterful rhetoric and extreme nationalism, Hitler quickly manipulated the masses.
He propagated ideas of revenge, expansionism, and racial supremacy, turning them into instruments for his ambitions.
Despite being forbidden by the Treaty of Versailles, Germany secretly and then openly rearmed extensively.
They built a formidable war machine with advanced weaponry and tactics, from tanks to modern fighter aircraft.
The specter of war became tangible, bolstered by an elite and well-equipped army.
In 1938, Germany annexed Austria, a blatant violation of the Treaty of Versailles, initiating a chain of expansionist actions.
European powers offered only weak condemnation, placing blind faith in appeasement, hoping to avoid another war.
Next came the Sudetenland crisis, where Hitler demanded control over the German-speaking region of Czechoslovakia. At the Munich conference, Britain and France appeased Hitler, hoping to avoid war, but inadvertently fueled Germany's expansionist ambitions. When Germany fully occupied Czechoslovakia in March 1939, appeasement clearly failed.
Britain and France were compelled to offer guarantees of protection to Poland, but the promise came too late to prevent tragedy.
In August 1939, the world was stunned as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was signed between Germany and the Soviet Union. A secret protocol divided Eastern Europe. This was the final move, paving the way for the attack on Poland, unleashing an unforeseen nightmare. Using the fabricated Gleiwitz incident, Germany created a pretext to attack Poland.
At dawn, on September 1st, 1939, the Nazi war machine launched its lightning assault on Poland from the west.
This marked the beginning of Blitzkrieg, lightning war, combining the power of tanks and motorized infantry for rapid, overwhelming attacks. The Luftwaffe launched relentless attacks, obliterating defensive lines, paving the way for ground forces.
This tactic allowed piercing and encircling the enemy, creating an unstoppable storm of steel and fire.
Polish defensive lines rapidly collapsed due to poor equipment and lack of coordination, despite their fierce and courageous resistance.
Against the overwhelming might of the German onslaught, Polish soldiers could only fight in vain. On September 17th, the Soviet Red Army attacked from the east, as agreed with Germany.
Polish forces were encircled from both sides, leading to the complete collapse of the Polish state, becoming a dual victim of two great powers.
On October 6, 1939, Poland was completely partitioned. Over 60,000 Polish soldiers and civilians perished. Hundreds of thousands were captured or deported, signaling the brutality of modern warfare. On September 3, 1939, Britain and France finally declared war on Germany, marking the full outbreak of World War II.
However, no real military action occurred in Western Europe. A period known as the Phony War began.
For months, a phony war settled over Western Europe. Armies on both sides remained static.
They awaited an attack whose timing was unknown, in an eerie quiet before the storm. In April 1940, Germany suddenly attacked and occupied Denmark and Norway.
The objective was to secure vital resources and strategic naval bases, preempting the smaller northern European nations.
In May 1940, Germany launched a swift assault on the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg.
With devastating bombings and paratrooper landings, Germany easily breached defenses, paving the way for the attack on France.
Allied forces trusted the Maginot Line and believed the Ardennes forest was impassable, concentrating their troops in the north.
Manstein's daring plan led German forces through the Ardennes, striking the Allied flank, delivering a surprising fatal blow. Blitzkrieg tactics proved effective once again as German forces rapidly sliced through Allied lines,
causing widespread panic and disarray within the French army, unprepared for this speed of assault.
Allied forces were cornered at Dunkirk, facing complete annihilation. Hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers were cornered on the beach, left with only prayer for a miraculous escape.
Hurry now, lads!
Yet
Into the
a
boats!
miraculous evacuation unfolded. Operation Dynamo, an extraordinary British effort.
Hundreds of civilian
safe
vessels
now.
bravely crossed the channel, rescuing approximately 338,000 Allied soldiers from encirclement.
Welcome aboard,
a miracle
son. You've
amidst
made
the
it.
brutal conflict.
Nevertheless, France swiftly collapsed. On June 14, 1940, German troops marched into Paris.
On June 22, 1940, France signed the armistice, ending any hope of resistance, marking the end of an era.
With the fall of France, Italy, under Benito Mussolini, joined the war on Germany's side in June 1940.
Italy's entry expanded the scale and power of the Axis, creating new fronts in the Mediterranean and North Africa. With France fallen, Hitler set his sights on Britain, the last bastion in Western Europe.
Operation Sea Lion was drafted, but for an invasion to succeed, the Luftwaffe had to gain complete air superiority over Britain.
From July to August 1940, the Luftwaffe began preliminary attacks targeting British shipping and ports. They attempted to blind Britain's radar early warning system, a crucial factor enabling the RAF to respond effectively. The Royal Air Force, though outnumbered, with its formidable Spitfire and Hurricane fighters, was ready to defend their homeland skies. Britain's radar system, though attacked, maintained its early warning capability, a vital factor enabling the RAF to respond effectively. In the second phase, from mid-August to early September, Germany concentrated its attacks on RAF airfields, depots, and logistical facilities.
The RAF suffered heavy losses, with many brave pilots sacrificing their lives, but the force did not completely collapse.
For months during the summer and autumn of 1940, the skies over Britain became the battleground for history's most intense aerial combat.
Hundreds of pilots sacrificed their lives in the skies, but every small victory held vital significance. The aim was to break British morale by inflicting terror on civilians. But the shift to civilian attacks gave the RAF time to recover, further strengthening the resolve of the British people.
Despite heavy losses, the diversion to civilian bombing allowed the RAF time to recover its strength.
The Luftwaffe failed to control British airspace. Operation Sea Lion was cancelled.
Meanwhile, in Asia, Japan relentlessly expanded, occupying vast territories in China and Indochina.
Run!
They prepared for a larger conflict and cast a dark shadow over the region, forming the Axis power in the east.
In April 1941, following Italy's failure in Greece, Germany was forced to intervene in the Balkan front. Germany attacked Yugoslavia and Greece, swiftly conquering both within weeks, solidifying the Axis position in southeastern Europe.
On June 22, 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, deploying over 3 million troops in 3 main thrusts against the Soviet Union.
Cities and villages were leveled, civilians enduring unimaginable brutality from the Nazi onslaught. The Soviet Union suffered heavy casualties and losses, but with unwavering resolve, it did not fully collapse. Stalin's crucial decision, not one step back, ordering to fight to the last, galvanized the resistance.
On December 7th, 1941, Japan
Far
launched
in
a
the
surprise
Pacific,
attack on the
Japan
U.S. Pearl Harbor
prepared its
naval base,
strike force
inflicting heavy
in
damage
silence.
on the Pacific Fleet.
Hundreds of U.S. aircraft were destroyed or severely damaged on the ground, unable to take off.
We're under attack!
Over
Man your
2,400
stations!
Americans were killed in this surprise attack, a massive shock to the entire nation.
The attack was not just a military blow, but a profound shock to American morale, completely changing the course of the war.
A date which will live
The
in
attack
infamy.
on Pearl Harbor
The
forced
United
the
States
United
of America
States to
was suddenly
officially
and
enter the
deliberately
war.
attacked.
American industry was fully mobilized, becoming the arsenal of democracy, producing vast military hardware.
From this point, World War II truly became a global conflict, no longer confined to Europe.
In the 1939-1941 period, the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, Japan, gained a significant advantage controlling much of Europe and East Asia.
But the formation of a strong Allied coalition signaled a much longer and more brutal war to come, reshaping the 20th century.
By 1944, the global war had irrevocably shifted course. From unstoppable offensives, the Axis now faced a fierce counter-assault from all directions, signaling the final days of the storm.
Before D-Day, U.S. paratroopers boarded a near-suicidal mission that could shift the war's fate. Thousands of paratroopers dropped into Normandy to disrupt German supply lines and spread chaos, despite danger and dispersion.
Meanwhile, on the rough waves of the English Channel, tens of thousands of other Allied soldiers awaited the fateful landing moment.
At Omaha Beach, American forces suffered heavy losses due to treacherous terrain and strong German defensive fire. Every meter gained came at a bloody price, but the Allied will to advance was unshakable. Every American soldier, with every weapon in hand, fought with extraordinary courage to overcome the Omaha meat grinder.
To break through fortified positions, U.S. soldiers had to employ every tactic, from hand grenades to specialized explosives, eliminating every enemy strong point.
Amidst the firestorm, brave medics defied danger, racing against death to save fragile lives, and the timely communication was vital. Liaison officers risked their lives to maintain the information lifeline, ensuring coordination between units.
From the formidable fortifications of the Atlantic Wall, German soldiers unleashed relentless firepower. They were determined to hold the line at all costs.
Over 156,000 troops from 12 nations, 7,000 ships, and 10,000 aircraft joined the largest military operation in modern history. Before D-Day dawned, American and British paratroopers landed behind German lines to cut off supply routes and sow chaos.
To maintain the offensive, logistics were crucial, but every victory came at the cost of blood and tears.
On the chaotic battlefield, frontline officers played a pivotal role, pushing soldiers through a fear, advancing under fire.
Amidst the brutality of war, camaraderie always ignited hope, driving them to fight for one another.
In early August 1944, as German forces in France began to withdraw, the French resistance, FFI, in Paris rose up, seizing control of the city from within.
They turned every street into a trench, every house into a fortress, engaging German soldiers in fierce street battle.
They were brave Parisians directly confronting the occupying enemy, fighting for Paris to be liberated by itself, by the French people.
General Dietrich von Choltitz, German commander in Paris, received orders from Hitler to destroy the city, but refused to execute them. This decision saved Paris from destruction. General Leclerc's French 2nd Armored Division, along with the U.S. Third Army, entered Paris. The people poured into the streets, waving flags and cheering for victory.
This event boosted France's reconstruction and symbolized the French resistance and fascism's collapse in Western Europe.
At the same time, the Soviet Union launched Operation Bagration, June 1944, destroying the German Army Group Center in Belarus.
With overwhelming armored might, the Soviet Red Army broke through German lines, crushing all resistance in their advance. Soviet infantry, with unwavering spirit, cleared every enemy pocket of resistance, relentlessly pushing forward.
Operation Bagration shattered German defenses, killing or isolating hundreds of thousands and opening the way into Poland and Germany. After Bagration, the Red Army pushed west, liberating Eastern Europe as Romania and Bulgaria turned against Germany. By late 1944, the Red Army continued its deep advance into Hungary, facing the last resistance of Germany and their allied units. The liberation of these nations was not just a military victory, but also reshaped the political map of Eastern Europe for decades to come. In December 1944, Germany launched the Ardennes Offensive, hoping to split the Allies and turn the war. Allied forces were caught by surprise, fighting fiercely in the biting cold of winter, attempting to halt the German advance. German Tiger II tanks, steel behemoths, exerted immense pressure on Allied lines, but stubborn American resistance slowed their advance. In the biting cold of the Ardennes winter, American soldiers had to battle both the enemy and the harsh weather, testing the limits of their endurance. In early 1945, the Red Army advanced 500 kilometers in 3 weeks during the Vistula-Oder offensive, reaching Germany's border and setting the stage for Berlin. In April 1945, 2 million Soviet troops stormed Berlin, turning every street and house into brutal urban combat. In ruined Berlin, each building became a battlefield as the Red Army cleared resistance with assault tactics.
To break through fortified pockets of resistance, the Red Army employed immense artillery power, reducing buildings to rubble.
In urban combat, every soldier became a tank hunter, using grenades and bazookas to destroy German armor. As Berlin fell, German troops, including teens and militias, fought desperately with no hope of retreat. Even in the final hours, German forces launched sporadic counterattacks, inflicting significant casualties, demonstrating extreme tenacity. The Battle of Berlin became brutal, close combat, testing courage and survival to the limit.
While intense fighting raged above ground, millions of Berlin civilians lived in utter terror, hiding in shelters, praying for an end.
On April 30, 1945, the Soviet flag rose over the Reichstag, marking the Nazi regime's collapse. On the same day the victory flag flew, Adolf Hitler, in final desperation, committed suicide in his bunker, ending his bloody reign.
On May 8, 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered unconditionally, sparking celebrations worldwide.
It was Victory in Europe Day, VE Day, concluding the most devastating war on the old continent. On the same day victory in Europe was declared, Nazi Germany officially signed the instrument of unconditional surrender, ending a brutal era. Advancing into Germany, the Soviets discovered the Nazi regime's worst crimes at Auschwitz. The scenes inside the concentration camps were living proof of the unimaginable brutality of war and fascism. Across Europe, Western allies also discovered other horrific concentration camps, exposing the full truth of the genocide. After Guadalcanal, the U.S. used island hopping to seize key islands and advance toward Japan, bypassing lesser strongholds. At Saipan, June 1944, U.S. troops faced fanatical resistance as Japanese soldiers and civilians chose death over surrender. In desperation, Japanese troops launched night banzai charges, refusing to surrender. The Battle of the Philippine Sea, or the Great Mariana Turkey Shoot, destroyed Japan's air power and veteran pilots. After this battle, Japan's navy lost its strength and could no longer launch major operations. U.S. naval air power proved decisive in the Pacific, with carriers launching hundreds of aircraft to strike the enemy. The Battle of Peleliu, September 1944, was a brutal, costly fight with limited strategic value. The October 1944 Battle of Leyte Gulf, history's largest naval clash, shattered Japan's navy beyond recovery. In June 1945, U.S. forces captured Okinawa, preparing for a direct assault on Japan. This was one of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific.
Fire for effect!
Allied artillery pounded Japanese strongholds, clearing the way for infantry to advance.
To defeat Japanese cave defenses, U.S. troops used brutal tactics like flamethrowers and explosives.
Japan's trench and tunnel networks turned each island into a deadly maze, causing heavy U.S. losses.
In Okinawa's dense jungle, every officer's command was a vital call, pushing soldiers beyond their limits of endurance.
When encircled, many Japanese soldiers chose death, refusing to surrender, embodying a fight-to-the-death spirit.
Kamikaze pilots weren't madmen. They embraced death, driven by belief and a dying empire's despair.
Kamikaze, a desperate attack, inflicted significant damage on the American fleet, but could not change the course of the war. In Operation Tengo, the battleship Yamato faced hundreds of U.S. aircraft, firing all guns until the end.
Hundreds of U.S. planes turned the Yamato into a blazing wreck, proving naval air power's dominance.
Yamato, last pride of Japan's navy, sank with thousands aboard, marking the end of battleships and the rise of naval air power.
Before the atomic bombs, U.S. air forces relentlessly bombed Japanese cities, destroying infrastructure and weakening the will to resist.
The Japanese military tried to defend with all remaining resources, but could not stop the large-scale U.S. air raids.
Japanese cities were severely devastated by firebombing raids, causing immense destruction and leaving civilians homeless.
The lives of Japanese civilians were a constant horror, forced to flee from incessant bombings and the ever-present threat of death.
In a final push to end the war, the U.S. sent the B-29 Enola Gay with a new weapon that would change history. On August 6, 1945, a morning just like any other in Hiroshima, but it was to be the last peaceful morning. In mere seconds, a terrifying flash of light changed everything. The atomic bomb's unprecedented power turned Hiroshima and Nagasaki into ghost cities, killing hundreds of thousands and unleashing ultimate horror.
On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced unconditional surrender, paving the way for the war's end.
On September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri, Japan signed the surrender, marking the end of World War II.
The war ended, millions of soldiers joyfully reunited with their families, but peace came amid horrific devastation.
Alongside the joy of return was immense reconstruction effort. Devastated cities slowly revived from the rebels, beginning a new chapter.
World War II ended, but the Cold War began, dividing the world into two blocks led by the US and the Soviet Union with opposing ideologies.
Millions of lives were lost, leaving a profound lesson on the value of peace, unity, and the devastating consequences of hatred.
History forever serves as a reminder for future generations about the immense sacrifice and the importance of maintaining peace.
On the morning of December 7, 1941, a day that Americans would forever remember, a surprise attack shattered the peace of Pearl Harbor. That moment opened a dark chapter in history, the greatest and most devastating conflict known as the Pacific War. On the radar screen of the Opana Point station, a small dot appeared, which quickly turned into a large group of fast-moving bright dots.
The radar operator was startled, raised his hand to his ear, trying to hear better, his face starting to show anxiety.
Too perfect weather. Yes, sir. Unidentified planes. Probably incoming B-17s from the mainland, don't worry.
The Japanese combined fleet secretly entered the waters near Hawaii. The giant aircraft carriers hid in the darkness before dawn.
For the Emperor and for Japan, today we strike. Remember your training, your honor.
Pearl Harbor sky. A group of Japanese dive bombers, IG-D3A Val, appeared in the sky. They began to dive. From the cockpit of a low-flying Japanese torpedo bomber,
Nakajima B-5N Kate. Lieutenant Kaieto Nakamura saw the American battleships clearly in sight. He tightened his grip on the control stick and pressed the button to release the torpedoes. USS Oklahoma was hit by a torpedo. The hull of the ship gradually tilted. Seawater rushed in. American soldiers on the deck slipped and fell, panicking.
Fire! 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 Fire!
The tracer bullet shot out, cutting through the air, chasing a circling Japanese Zero.
Zero lost control and plunged into the nearby sea, leaving a trail of black smoke and a small explosion when it hit the water.
Got one. We're under attack! Man your stations!
A bomb from a Japanese plane hit the ammunition depot of the battleship USS Arizona. A huge explosion erupted, and a huge column of fire and black smoke shot into the sky, obscuring the sky.
Let me up! Let me up!
Jack's P-40 took off powerfully from the runway, through the smoke and fire. His machine gun began to roar, bullets tearing through the air towards the Zero.
Warning. Enemy planes taking off.
The Zero, shot down by Ethan Miller, burns on the sea. Several other Japanese planes began flying higher to avoid the heavy anti-aircraft fire.
Anti-aircraft stronger than expected.
American soldiers rescue wounded comrades, their faces shocked and bewildered. The sound of rushing water into the sunken ships.
I can't move! I can't move him!
Standing in the rubble, eyes lifeless, looking at the scene, small wound on face.
Resounding success. The U.S. Pacific Fleet has been neutralized.
We have awakened a sleeping giant. This is only the beginning of a protracted war. If only we had more time.
The attack on Pearl Harbor was a declaration of war. America was awakened, but the road ahead was fraught with peril. We faced a courageous and ruthless adversary who had rapidly seized vast territories. The Pacific War was not just land or sea battles, but a clash of wills, of opposing values, where every island, every inch of ground had to be paid for with blood and tears.
Midway. AF is Midway.
Sir, we have identified their next target, Midway. Their plan is a carrier strike at dawn. This is our chance. We will ambush. Mobilize everything we have. Not a single one of their carriers will escape.
Panoramic view of the U.S. aircraft carrier fleet, quietly heading out to sea, hiding. In the cockpit of an F-4 Wildcat fighter, nervous but confident, he saw the Japanese fleet in the distance through the scope. His plane took off powerfully from the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise. A series of American fighter jets and bombers flew in formation, hunting for targets. The roar of their engines echoed throughout the sky.
A group of low-flying American TBD Devastator torpedo bombers suddenly appeared from behind a Japanese aircraft carrier.
Torpedoes separated from plane.
The torpedo shot across the water, leaving a long white trail heading straight for the ship's hull.
The Japanese 25mm and 127mm anti-aircraft guns began to open fire fiercely.
A group of American SBD Dauntless dive bombers appeared, and they suddenly dived straight at the aircraft carrier Akagi.
A bomb from an American plane hit the aircraft carrier Akagi's hangar. A huge explosion occurred, destroying the planes parked on the deck. The entire Akagi shook violently. Flames blazed high, engulfing the detonating ammunition compartments.
What's happening? Why is there smoke? Akagi!
Kaga, hear you. Sorry, respond. What's happening?
We're under attack. Carriers are sinking. Repeat, carriers are sinking.
A small group of Japanese dive bombers and torpedo planes attempted to take off in the chaos.
Ensign Kaito Nakamura flies his Zero straight into the American formation, determined to protect the last ships. He fires off volleys, trying to take down an SBD Dauntless.
Whisper in Japanese. さようなら。我が子と我が家族。
Sir. All 4 aircraft carriers sunk. Our fleet has suffered a catastrophic defeat.
Enemy intelligence was too precise.
Our primary targets are Tokyo, Yokohama, and Nagoya.
B-25s from an aircraft carrier? Impossible.
We will make it happen. This is a psychological blow.
At a secret airfield, American engineers and pilots are hard at work on B-25 Mitchell bombers.
Escape plan. Emergency landing in China.
Sunrise over the Pacific Ocean. Panoramic view of the USS Hornet aircraft carrier underway. B-25 Mitchells lined up on the deck, wings hanging off the edge. Close-up of a B-25 flying low over the ocean, almost skimming the waves to avoid Japanese radar.
POV from the cockpit, looking out, only seeing the vast ocean and the looming horizon.
The B-25 approaches the coast of Japan. Mountains in the distance come into view.
Lower altitude. Prepare for attack.
A peaceful morning in Tokyo. People walking on the streets, children playing in the park.
Air raid! Air raid!
Panoramic view of military and industrial targets in Tokyo, factories, oil depots bombed by B-25s. Columns of smoke and fire rose from the attacked areas, creating a chaotic but controlled scene.
In his office in Tokyo, Colonel Kenji Tanaka heard an explosion and sirens. He rushed out the window and saw smoke rising in the distance.
Impossible!
The B-25s completed their mission and turned west, heading toward China. Close-up of an American pilot in the cockpit, his face tired but his eyes full of pride.
And reports are coming in that American bombers, led by Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, have successfully struck targets in Tokyo.
Close-up of an elderly woman's face, she smiles brightly, hugging her young grandchild.
Doolittle did not cause much material damage, but it was a declaration of war.
They said it couldn't be done.
It showed Japan that nowhere was safe. It also told us that this war would not be fought just at sea or in the air, but would be fought for every inch of land, every island. The next chapter was Guadalcanal, where hell really exists.
After Midway, the Japanese began to lose the initiative, and then true hell began in a place called Guadalcanal. It wasn't just a fight against the enemy, but against the jungle itself, disease, and the harsh climate. For months, our Marines had to hold on, fighting for every inch of ground in the worst conditions. The landing craft's ramp opened, revealing white sand and dense green trees. Mac and his comrades jumped into the water and waded ashore, rifles at the ready.
As they moved deeper inland, the surroundings became eerily quiet.
Found it. Henderson Field. Retreat. Retreat. We will counterattack later.
Sir, we have retreated from Henderson Field. Next steps?
We will not abandon Guadalcanal. We will launch a major counterattack, even if it means fighting to the last drop of blood.
Night falls on Guadalcanal. Rain begins to fall lightly. Mac McMillan lay in the muddy trench, trying to sleep.
A group of Japanese scouts moved stealthily through the jungle.
A Japanese scout crept closer to the American position. He used binoculars to look at the American defense position. Japanese artillerymen are busy loading shells into the 75mm Type 41 mountain gun. The bullet is pushed into the barrel.
Requesting artillery counterfire.
Coordinates X, Y, Z.
Target bearing 090. Range 15,000.
090, 15,000.
The American battleship's 16-inch gun turrets roared, firing huge fireballs toward Guadalcanal. Huge shells fell on Japanese artillery positions, creating huge explosions that leveled the entire area.
Corporal Hiroshi Sato was thrown from his gun position by the force. He struggled to get up, looking at the horrifying scene before him.
The Japanese begin their counterattack. Corporal Hiroshi Sato and his comrades advanced through the dense jungle. Gunfire began. Japanese and American soldiers suddenly clashed. Fighting was fierce. Corporal Hiroshi Sato crawls through the bushes, trying to reach the American soldiers' position.
Overrun. Need immediate artillery support.
The M101 howitzer roared, firing a barrage of fire into the jungle.
Jack Riley was starting his
job, Riley. Keep it
F4F
up.
Wildcat. He heard gunfire nearby. Corporal Hiroshi Sato crawls out of a burning bush. Other Japanese soldiers tried to crawl out of the burning area. A group of Japanese bombers attacked Henderson Field. Ethan Miller was operating a 50 cal machine gun. He was firing continuously. A Japanese plane was hit, emitting black smoke, and crashed into the sea nearby.
Hold your ground! Don't retreat! Shouting and grunting. Hey, Breeze! Tenno Heika Banzai!
Mac McMillan blocked Hiroshi's bayonet, then smashed him hard on the head with the butt of his M1 Garand.
Faint groan.
Mac gasped, looked down at Hiroshi, and quickly turned back to continue fighting the Japanese troops pouring in.
The Japanese finally retreated. The Americans were tired, but victorious.
Hiroshi Sato is being dragged away by his Japanese comrades. He regains consciousness, coughing, looking back at the battlefield.
Guadalcanal was a deadly green island where every step could be the last, but we held. We learned that tenacity, the coordination of infantry, artillery, and air power was the key. And this was only the beginning of a bitter war that would last for years on other inhospitable islands. After Guadalcanal, the
primary
situation
objective
changed.
is
The
Betio.
Allies began a leapfrog strategy, capturing key islands to use as a springboard
The
to
enemy
advance
has built
deep
extremely
into
strong
Japanese
defenses on
territory.
Betio.
But every island,
face the most
every
difficult
inch of
landing.
land had to be paid for with blood, especially Tarawa. It was a small coral reef, but it was one of the bloodiest battles of the U.S. Marines.
Corporal Hiroshi Sato and his Japanese comrades dig trenches, stack sandbags, and reinforce bunkers.
They will never get past these defenses. The sea will run red with their blood.
Huge shells from the 16-inch gun turrets fired, sending up huge columns of water and smoke over the island.
Corporal Hiroshi Sato and his comrades cowered.
Hundreds of LVT landing craft carrying U.S. Marines raced toward the beach. Mac McMillan and his comrades crowded into the Amtrak.
Let's go, let's go! Keep moving!
Keep moving! They've got us pinned down!
I'm hit!
Mac McMillan tried to move as fast as he could. He fell into the water a few times, but got up and continued to wade forward.
Get through the wire! Get through the wire! Keep moving!
A U.S. Marine falls into the water.
Several American Shermans successfully landed. They began shelling Japanese bunkers in defensive positions.
Corporal Hiroshi Sato looked out from the bunker. A comrade next to him was hit by a shell and fell down.
Move up! Move up! Fire in the hole!
Pillbox, #3 destroyed. Advancing.
Next strong point is the command bunker. We need to destroy it.
Japanese soldiers suddenly launched suicidal counterattacks from the intricate tunnels and underground bunkers with bayonets and grenades. Pilots flew over Tarawa, providing support for infantry and bombarding Japanese defenses.
Watch out, Zero on my tail!
From near the shore, Hiroshi Sato watched his teammates Zero plunge into the water, his eyes filled with despair.
Keep moving! For the Emperor! Forward!
After 3 days of fierce fighting, the guns fall silent. U.S. Marines are exhausted, their faces streaked.
Tarawa was a costly lesson. It taught us that no matter how much shelling, no matter how carefully prepared, the enemy's tenacity in his underground fortifications was a terrible challenge. But we had won it, inch by inch, and we would continue to advance westward toward Japan.
Tarawa was a costly lesson. It taught us that no matter how much shelling, no matter how carefully prepared, the enemy's tenacity in his underground fortifications was a terrible challenge. But we had won it, inch by inch, and we would continue to advance westward toward Japan.
Hiroshi Sato and his teammates rested in the dam tunnel, eating frugally in stifling silence.
We will fight to the last man. No one is permitted to retreat or surrender.
American firepower opened with a fierce artillery barrage, engulfing the entire island in fire and smoke.
They're still there! All of them! How is that possible after all that shelling?
Japanese soldiers suddenly opened fire fiercely from loopholes and hidden tunnels.
Medic! I need a medic over here.
Mac McMillan took cover in the sand and counterattacked with an M1 Garand. A Japanese soldier coldly fires a machine gun from a narrow loophole.
Jack Riley led American planes in a fierce bombing raid on Japanese defense positions.
A group of Zeros suddenly appeared, leading to a fierce air battle in the sky over Iwo Jima.
Despite the plane being on fire, the Zero pilots still tried to crash into an American target with suicidal intentions. U.S. air defense forces opened fire fiercely. The Zero exploded in midair.
Move up! We need to clear these tunnels now!
In the smoke and heat, Hiroshi Sato and his teammates desperately returned fire from inside the bunker.
Hiroshi Sato was shot and collapsed in the tunnel, blood pouring out from under him.
We've taken strong point 1, advancing on Mount Suribachi.
The Marines began to make their heavy way up the slopes of Mount Suribachi.
We did it! We took the hill!
Colonel, the Americans have raised their flag on Mount Suribachi. Stay alert!
I heard something.
Cough!
As night fell, Japanese soldiers launched desperate banzai suicide attacks.
Even though his shoulder was covered in blood, Mac McMillan did not stop. He continued to fight in silence.
Wounded! Need immediate medical support!
From offshore, American warships continued to fire, pouring flares and shells onto the island to support the infantry and repel the banzai attacks at night.
Iwo Jima is a testament to the brutality of war, where thousands of lives were lost just to gain a small piece of land. But it is also a symbol of the unshakable courage of soldiers on both sides. We planted our flag on that volcano, and once again, the road to Japan was shortened, but the price was too high. Iwo Jima is a testament to the brutality of war, where thousands of lives were lost just to gain a small piece of land. But it is also a symbol of the unshakable courage of soldiers on both sides. We planted our flag on that volcano, and once again, the road to Japan was shortened, but the price was too high.
Hiroshi Sato and his teammates turned the cave into a fortress, working hard to reinforce each position to prepare for the fierce battle ahead.
The first wave of American troops landed on Okinawa with surprising ease when no significant resistance appeared. None of the American soldiers knew that the enemy had retreated underground, silently preparing a firestorm, waiting for them to advance further.
Mac McMillan ducked behind a rock, trying to keep his gun steady as his teammates fell beside him.
Through a narrow slit in a dark cave, Hiroshi Sato coldly fired at the advancing American soldiers, without revealing a single trace of emotion.
An American Sherman approached the cave entrance and fired continuously into the Rocky Mountain, determined to destroy the last blockade.
In a roaring Hellcat, Jack Riley swooped down on the island, wiping out every gun emplacement and machine gun nest with pinpoint fire.
The sky suddenly rumbled as a group of kamikazes dived straight down from above the American fleet, like a thunderbolt announcing death. Jack Riley swooped in to intercept a kamikaze that was diving toward the warship, determined not to let it reach its target.
Jack hit the kamikaze's engine, but it stubbornly continued to fly through the smoke and flames.
American anti-aircraft guns roared fiercely from the deck, creating a rain of bullets to stop the incoming suicide plane.
Despite being hit by bullets, the kamikaze still crashed straight into the warship, igniting a terrible explosion in the middle of the ocean.
From inside a cave, Hiroshi Sato watched his comrade's suicide plane crash into an American warship, and he could only bow his head in silence.
Hiroshi Sato and his last group of soldiers were surrounded, but they fought to their last breath without surrendering.
Okinawa, the last battle of the land war. More than 100,000 lives had fallen on this small piece of land. It was a grim warning of the cost of invasion. We had won, but it had been a victory stained with blood and tears. Both we and they had paid a heavy price. And now, with the battle for the last island over, we knew that the only way left was to advance into Japan itself, or find some other way to end the war. After the capture of Okinawa, the road to the Japanese homeland was open. But we knew that a full-scale invasion would be an unthinkable disaster. What was the alternative? It was to turn the skies into a battlefield, to bring the war to their doorstep. The B-29 super fortresses were mobilized, carrying their devastating payloads. Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka, the great cities of Japan would face an inferno from above, unprecedented in the history of war.
It's so nice to have these quiet evenings together.
Indeed, a good meal and good company. I'm glad we could all be here.
Target locked. Prepare to drop bombs.
The bomb bay of a B-29 opened like the gates of hell, revealing hundreds of firebombs about to be dropped on Tokyo.
Each bomb fell from the compartment like rain, carried by the wind, signaling the unprecedented devastation that would befall the city. In just a few minutes, Tokyo was engulfed in flames, red light from the ground rising, engulfing the night sky. The B-29 flew silently through the sea of fire below, the cockpit steaming and the heat reverberating from the burning city.
Help! Someone help us! Help us! It's too much!
Before the radar screen of bright dots, Japanese officers watched in helpless silence as the B-29s approached like predators.
Japanese anti-aircraft guns still roared in despair. Each weak bullet streak sank into the burning sea and sky.
Japanese night fighters appeared, but in the vast formation of B-29s, they were like swallows lost in a storm.
Jack looked down at the burning city, his face weary, no trace of victory, only the echoes of smoke and silence. Even though he heard bombs falling in the distance and sirens wailing, Hiroshi continued to work, as if there was no other choice but to endure. Dozens of such air raids took place, day and night, reducing Japanese cities to ashes. It was a brutal tactic, but it was designed to force them to surrender, to avoid an invasion that would cost millions of lives. We saw its consequences from above. We saw Tokyo burn. It was a horror, a necessary horror. But in any case, the war was not over. The final decision was still ahead. The air raids devastated Japan, but they still did not surrender. Every day that passed, more lives were lost. The war seemed endless. Then, a terrible decision was made. A new weapon, a weapon unknown to mankind, was ready to change everything. It was the moment when war entered a new era, an era we hope will never be repeated.
All right, team, final checks. Let's move.
From the cockpit, they looked down at the peaceful city of Hiroshima below. Hiroshi Sato was thrown by the force and tried to stand up amidst the devastation. The crew looked back at the mushroom cloud that was still there in a heavy silence.
Proceed with the plan.
The atomic explosion, it ended the war. There were no more landings,
There were no more Tarawas. There were no more Iwo Jimas. It saved millions of lives. But its price, the destruction it brought, will forever scar the history of mankind. It was the moment we won the war, but it was also the moment we faced a new reality. A world that could be destroyed at the push of a button. The war was over, but its questions were.
The Pacific War is over. A war unlike any before it, filled with brutal island battles, brutal air battles, and ending with a weapon that forever changed the face of war. Soldiers like me, like Mac McMillan, and Japanese soldiers like Hiroshi Sato, we were all part of that history. The scars, both physical and mental, will never fully heal, but at least the war is over.
The Pacific War is over, but its lessons endure. Of courage, of resilience, and of the terrible cost of conflict. We cannot change the past, but we can learn from it, so that the sacrifices were not in vain, so that the echoes of gunfire never have to be heard again, so that peace is the only thing left on the beaches, the islands, and the skies where battle once took place.